So hello Jeannie, and as you recall, this is the graphic that you used as the basis for a symmetrical pattern that became the mandala design that you digitized for the challenge. And I like mandalas, I think they're great. You can have such fun with them and break the designs down into different parts and use them in so many different ways. And we'll have a look at one or two of those ways at the end of the review. Now, these green lines here are mine, and I've only done it so that I can divide the mandala up into sections. And obviously, as you know, the idea is that you digitize a part of it, these elements here perhaps, and then having done that, you then copy them and paste and rotate, move them all around, put them segments in, and then we insert the travel lines in between. And that's pretty much what you did. But you also did some things here that were absolutely inspired. I was quite impressed actually with one or two of the bits that you did. And this is what you actually produced. This is actually 9 centimeters wide, 9 centimeters deep in real life. That's 3.5 inches. On the screen here, it's actually showing in the photograph probably just not quite double the size of what it is in real life. You stitched it out on a Jeannie 11,000 with a size 14 needle, cotton fabric and sticky back stabilizer, and I note that you used a size 200mm hoop because you actually thought when you were digitizing it that you'd done the design larger than you actually had. And I know why that had happened, because it keeps catching me out as well. I've been learning how to use Embird for the last 3 weeks with your design and a couple of others, just to be able to do justice to this as a feedback review so that I can understand how you did what you did and one or two of the bits and pieces that perhaps we can have a look at. So that's the photograph there, and as you can see, we've used lots of different stitches. Underneath here is a motif fill number 3. You've used satin stitch, the contour stitch in Jeannie, which is called strips in Embird. Here we've got a sketch stitch, which is a little bit of a back stitch or a stem stitch halfway between the two in Embird. It's really quite a nice outlining stitch. Some candle wicks. Plain fill here and here, but you've put a wave stitch on it going concave here, and the wave going on it convex here. In Jeannie software and in Hatch software this is called Florentine, but in Embird it's called wave. So more satin stitch here, plain fill here, and then around the edge here is a motif run line together with another outline of the sketch. Now, you did mention that you want to do this as a larger design and that you're going to have another look at it, and when you do, I think there are a couple of things that you need to bear in mind. And one of them obviously is looking at this fluting and distortion here. And what I want you to think about is you've got a little bit of distortion here and here, and this is only 3.5 inches wide, and the same at the bottom. Now, given that this design, if you will, is rotated evenly all the way around, your grain line of your fabric is clearly running north, south, east, west. So why don't you have distortion here? But you do at the top and you do at the bottom. Now, I've worked out why, and that's something that you're going to need to think about when you do make it larger, simply because you're going to need to counteract it. And the reality is it's to do with the fact that you used this motif fill underneath here, which is in horizontal lines, and then under this object here, this one and this one, you only have an edge run underlay. There isn't anything supporting this, and in fact what's actually happening is all these stitches on this one and this one, and then those yellow stitches are all on the horizontal line, and they're yanking in here, which is what's causing this fluting. It's not happening here because these stitches on this fill and this fill are running pretty much vertically, whereas these stitches here are acting as an underlay for these pieces, because they're running horizontally as these are running vertically, and that's why you've not got the distortion here. And we can look at how we can actually resolve some of that for you when we actually go to the design. So over into Embird Studio here, this is the actual size of the design, and if I do a select all, here we go, you can see down at the bottom 88.1989. basically it's 90 by 90 millimeters or 9 centimeters or 3.5 inches. And that's the design. So the first thing that we're going to do, and I think this is why you ran into the problem that you did, I find that it tends to default to this view, which in fact is double the size, and this is the size that you thought that you'd done, but in fact when you actually check your hoop size here, again it's less than 100. So not a problem, but just something to bear in mind in future, that if you go to do your edit and do your preferences, when you very first create your design and then you select your hoop here, then that will actually help you when you set it on your preferences there. Your hoop will automatically come up the right size, or you just select it at this point here and pop it in there and make sure that your image then obviously comes in at that scale, and then you're less likely to run into the trouble that you have done. Okay, let's take a look here. What I want to do is just hide everything except selected, and this was the background here. It looks like a mesh, but in fact it isn't, because if we put it into sim and we do this stitch, and I'm just going to speed it up a little bit, I'm not going to run it all the way through, but can you see it's running horizontal, and in fact it's not a mesh, even though it this lozenge shape gives you the appearance. So if I stop that, if you actually look at this over in vectors here, if I just bring down some guidelines here, it'll just highlight it more than anything. Whoops, bring one down. So let's pop that on there, and let's pop this one on there. Can you see? It might as well just be horizontal lines going backwards and forwards, and this is what's pulling this in, and that's where I was making the point, that those large leaves where you've got your fill stitches, even though you've got the wave on them, they're going vertically, so this can act as an underlay for those, whereas these here, they're all running the same. You might as well not have any underlay under it at all, and that is in effect the situation that's being created. So how can we deal with that? Well, we can either alter this here. If you're not particularly bothered about having the lozenge shape, let's go to parameters, and in fact a really nice one to do, okay, is this. Now you got to have a think here, because at the moment with the lozenge shape you've got 6,465 stitches in there, but if you look at motif number 15 and you apply that, it's fabulous. Can you see how you've got now stitches going in all sorts of different directions? And that actually does create a mesh. Even though when it's stitched it's still going to go left to right, the direction which it fills it in. By the time you've done, your stitches are not all running on the horizontal. They are actually going in different directions. And that will act as an underlay underneath. Alternatively, of course, you can go for the plain fill. Take one of the, so we can do this. Let's put this down to, say, make it a grid of 2. So put that down to a 2mm gap, and the same for this one here. Whoops, too far. Onto 2, take off the cover stitches. Okay, let's leave those where they are and apply it. Okay, and as you can see here now we end up with the diamond mesh. We would probably, on this one, alter our start and finish points so that they'd be happier with this lattice that's going in here. And the way in which this one fills is it fills this direction first on the diagonal coming up here, and then it'll fill this direction in afterwards, and it just gives you a basic lattice. I can't get to the 3D on there. Okay, cancel that. So that is two things that you can actually do with the background. Alternatively, when we actually go to put these in, let's just highlight that so you can see here, and when we put this one in, okay, so the ones that we actually want to work with are these. If you particularly like this lozenge shape, then let's just ungroup that one. Okay, now the ones that we need to pick is this one, so we're going to hit Control and select that one, and then we're going to find this one here, which is there, and we're going to find that one there. So these are the four where we can say I want to keep the lozenge shape, so I'm just going to put some additional underlay underneath those. So I'm just going to put one zigzag in. I'm going to put it in at sort of 2mm apart, or 2.5 even. Let's go down. see I'm nearer to. Okay, and then I'm going to just move this, bearing in mind where it is. I'm just going to take, whoops, turn you off because I don't want you. Go for there and apply that and drop that in there. Now if I just move this and drop that background away. Okay, whoops, popped it back in. Now you can see there we have now got this underlay, and it's going to help on this one and this one, and of course I'm just going to take that away there now. Now one of the things here of course is that you would ungroup that and you would do this object, that one there, and you would do this one here. These others are going to be okay. They're not causing a problem. It's just this one, this one and this one, and it's the combination of those three together with this not having enough support underneath it which is causing that fluting. When you go larger you are going to have to address that, otherwise you'll end up with quite a bit of distortion. Just something to bear in mind. Alright then, so we've put down the background. The next thing that you actually put in was the ornaments here, and this is interesting as well. You've got your contour stitches, which in Mbird is the strip, with a little bit of satin stitch here, and you've done this piece, then this one, and that's all together. This has all then been grouped. That's that there, this copy, put the travel line in between, that's grouped, and then you've copied that set to this set, and here, and then put the travel lines in between. When you've got to the end here, travel line has walked your way down, and then you've created this satin stitch star. And of course we can check by ungrouping this. Let's ungroup it, and I'll just click off it here. So we can just check. Those scissors there are just the fact that that's your colour change between here and here. So you've got a trim and then it jumps onto this one here. But if we come down here you can see you haven't got any jumps, any trims that are kicking in there at all. So beautifully pathed all the way down through all these objects down to this particular object here. And in fact if we go across to vectors you can see it all quite nicely. Now just a couple of things that I would like you to look at on this one here is, let's look at that object. All these stitches here, which are the strips, they're all exactly the same issue, and it's not a big one, it's just something again to have a think about. Go on your parameters. Now you were using a size 14 needle, but that's a size 90, and yet your minimum stitch length you've set at 0.7 on this one, or you've left at 0.7. So how about we just increase that to 0.9. Now this is a very small object, in fact it's less than a quarter of an inch, it's only 4 millimeters. If you look here at this bottom section here, 4.2 by 4 millimeters, it's less than a quarter of an inch. So let's just take this down to 2 in terms of the stitch length that we're going to use. 2 millimeter stitch length, it's a fairly standard sewing length. You've got 7 strips in there, that's ideal if you're actually doing something larger. You could probably get away with 5 if you wanted to in this one. It's no biggie, it's whatever you choose to do. Obviously then you apply it, it'll just be slightly smaller stitches as far as that's concerned. And you're taking that one out here. Now at the moment this satin stitch object here is about 2 millimeters across. When you make it larger it's going to go up, I imagine, probably to about 5 millimeters. That's half a centimeter across. Now what we need to do of course is check that you have, what underlay is it that you've got on there, and at the moment you've got it auto select, so when you actually make that bigger the program will actually add in any additional underlay that's required, or at least it should. But just something that I have noticed here is your pull compensation you've got at 0.3. Perhaps consider dropping that to 0.2. They're small objects, they don't need that much. They really don't need to fling it out that far. 4.3, nice density for your Jeannie machine. I've got an 11,000 as well. And I find that 4.3, 4.5 is quite good on densities for that machine. And I imagine that yours is similar too. So there's that particular part. And just finally one little thing here on this star down in the middle. Let me cancel that one and let's find our way down to the bottom here, this star shape. Okay, if I just expand this a little bit larger, and then you'll see here. So when this ends up larger here, just have a look at this, the size here. Just need perhaps to do a little bit of node adjustment when you increase the size of the object. This bit's quite narrow here, whereas this bit's quite fat. And if you look at it in 3D, it shows it up a little bit more. So nothing more than a little bit of node adjustment, just tidying up really, nothing more. But apart from that, pathing is absolutely brilliant. No issues there at all.